Welcome back to the GSMC Hockey Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. We're talking preview of the Stanley Cup Final here, and this segment is going out to the top storylines of the Stanley Cup Final. The biggest storyline of the Stanley Cup Final is Connor McDavid, the legacy talks, the comparisons to Gretzky, the best player in the world, finally being able to prove it on the biggest stage in hockey has to offer of the Stanley Cup Final. That is the most exciting part of the Stanley Cup Final. Of course, the reason that a lot of guys are rooting for the Edmonton Oilers in this Cup Final is because of Connor McDavid here. I am so excited to see how he plays. I'm so excited to see how he plays in the Stanley Cup Final. He is definitely one of those guys that can just win a series by himself. We could kind of see that when it comes to the NBA Final. Luka Doncic seems like he can be a type of guy to win it by himself. I don't think it's the same level, though. I think Connor McDavid is the best player in hockey, and is the best player that hockey has seen since Mario Lemieux, maybe since Wayne Gretzky, and I would not argue with you too much if you were to say that. Connor McDavid is the greatest talent the hockey world has ever seen, and I truly believe that. And when it comes to Connor McDavid, him winning his first Stanley Cup will be absolutely monumental for the kid, and I can't wait to see that. So that's my number one storyline coming into the Stanley Cup Final. My number two storyline is you got to talk about the Canadian curse. No Canadian team has won a Stanley Cup Final while Gary Bettman has been the commissioner for the NHL. The Montreal Canadiens were the last team in 1993 to win the Stanley Cup Final, or the last Canadian team to win the Stanley Cup Final. For the Edmonton Oilers to be able to do it, there's been plenty of teams with a chance. It was the Canadiens in 21. It was the Canucks in 2011. It was the Oilers in 06. It was, I believe, 07 had a Canadian team as well. I'm just blanking on them, who they were. But for these Canadian teams, they just haven't been able to get it done in the Stanley Cup Final. Can the Edmonton Oilers become the first ones since the Montreal Canadiens in 1993 to do so? It will be so interesting to see if they are able to do so. That is why that is my second top storyline for the NHL Finals. My third is the Florida Panthers going back to the NHL Stanley Cup Final. They were there last year, faced off against the Vegas Golden Knights, and they were unable to beat the Vegas Golden Knights. But now they have a chance to go back-to-back and win on their second try. The Pittsburgh Penguins were the last to do it in 2009 after losing to the Detroit Red Wings in 2008. They had a chance to go in 2009 and get their revenge, and they were able to do so, winning that Stanley Cup Final. Of course, that was Sidney Crosby's first Stanley Cup Final of 3 of his career. And for the Edmonton Oilers, for the Florida Panthers, they definitely have a great chance. I believe they have a better matchup this time around than they did against Vegas. Vegas was such a super team last year. And for the Edmonton Oilers, I don't think that they're on the same level as that 2023 Vegas Golden Knights team. But only time will tell, and the Florida Panthers definitely can dictate that themselves. They definitely are a team that can win this on the bounce back, on the second try here. So that's something that I'm very interested in. Another storyline is Matthew Tkachuk and Sam Bennett. Both of these players played for the Calgary Flames for a while. Matthew Tkachuk, of course, playing most recently and getting traded directly from the Calgary Flames. He can go ahead and get some revenge for the Calgary Flames. Of course, if you guys don't know, the Calgary Flames and Edmonton Oilers have one of the richest rivalries in NHL history. It's called the Battle of Alberta, as that is the province that both of them share. And the Edmonton Oilers are not liked by the teams to the south of them in Calgary. But for Matthew Tkachuk and Sam Bennett, once you're in that rivalry, it never goes away from you. And these guys definitely are used to facing off against the Edmonton Oilers. And, of course, they're used to beating and playing physical against this Oilers team. So it's gonna be interesting to see what kind of flair that they bring into the Stanley Cup Finals with them, with that a little bit extra chip on their shoulder, as they are but they have an opportunity. They have an opportunity to kind of revenge their Calgary Flames arch nemesis in the Edmonton Oilers. I think a big storyline in the Stanley Cup Finals, moving on from the Battle of Alberta, is Stuart Skinner. Stuart Skinner needs to play amazing, and can he live up to that task? That's what I think is very interesting. With Stuart Skinner, not a fantastic goaltender historically, one of the worst in the Stanley Cup playoffs before this year. But for him, he definitely has the opportunity to right the ship, and he definitely has the opportunity at hand to go ahead and win the Edmonton Oilers the Stanley Cup Finals. He played fantastic in that last game against the Dallas Stars. I think he saved 38 of 39 shots. He was absolutely amazing, and they need that from Stuart Skinner. They need that version of Stuart Skinner when it's coming down to the Stanley Cup Finals. They're looking at that defense to. We talk about how amazing the Edmonton Oilers offense is, but when you get Darnell Nurse and Cody Ceci on the ice together, that's a shutdown pairing, and you have a fantastic third and fourth line for defense. Defensive-minded third and fourth line, as Adam Henrique's a great defensive guy, Connor Brown's a great defensive guy, Ryan McLeod can play good defense, and for the Edmonton Oilers, they're gonna need them in front of Stuart Skinner. You're going up against Sergei Bobrovsky, who is prone to stealing a game in the playoffs, and he definitely can against this Edmonton Oilers team. So for Stuart Skinner, you're going to need to match those blows and need to play competitive hockey against him, who Sergei Bobrovsky is having the playoff run of his life. He's playing out of his skates. Amazing. So for Stuart Skinner, he's going to need to match him, and it's going to be very interesting to see if he can. Of course, not having a fantastic postseason, Stuart Skinner, before that Dallas Stars series, but was able to turn it around a little bit, prove that he deserved to be the number one goaltender going into the Stanley Cup Final, and I'm very intrigued to see how he rises to the occasion. Another big name in this Stanley Cup Final is going to be Paul Maurice. That is the Florida Panthers head coach. This is his third attempt in the Stanley Cup Final. Has not won it the previous two times. He of course was with the Florida Panthers last year when they lost to the Vegas Golden Knights, but also in 2002, his first attempt at this, he lost to the Detroit Red Wings with the Carolina Hurricanes. You can't really blame the Carolina Hurricanes for losing to the Detroit Red Wings at the time, because that Detroit Red Wings team was one of the greatest teams that we've ever seen. Of course, winning. I think they won 3 cups in that span, if I'm not mistaken, and was such a legendary team. But they lost in 5 games in 2002. He was able to make it back with the Florida Panthers in 2023, unsuccessful, and now it's his third attempt at the Stanley Cup. And for Paul Maurice, there's nothing that he wants more than to win the Stanley Cup. Getting a third opportunity is very rare. He cannot waste it for himself and for his legacy in the NHL. Another big name, of course, is Alexander Barkov. He is the longest tenured Florida Panther. He has been on this team since 2013, their second overall pick in that year, in that draft. He has kind of bled red and white, or whatever you want to say their colors are. He has bled it for the last 11 years of his life. He is a huge part of this organization, the captain for the Florida Panthers. Been through this organization through thick and thin, of course going through a lot of down years in the mid-2010s. So for Alexander Barkov, him going to a Stanley Cup Final for the second year in a row, and for him to be able to win it is going to be huge for his legacy and for himself, who has been on this team for so long. But that'll wrap it up, the talks about the storylines going into the Stanley Cup Final. I'm going to take my fourth and final break of the night, and then when I come back, it's predictions and it's full series breakdown time, and I'm excited to get into that with you guys when I get back from my fourth break on the GSMC Hockey Podcast.